Welcome to Tales Told, a series where I perform readings on works of historic or cultural significance. This reading will be of an English fairy tale called Tit Tot. Let us begin. Once upon a time there was a woman. She baked 5 pies, and when they came out of the oven, they were that overbaked the crusts were too hard to eat. So she said to her daughter, "Daughter," says she, "put you them there pies on the shelf, and leave 'em there a little, and they'll come again." She meant, the crusts would get soft, but the girl, she says to herself, "Well, if they'll come again, I'll eat 'em now." And she set to work, and ate them all, first and last. Well, come supper time, the woman said, Go and get one of them there pies. I dare say they've come again now." The girl went, and she looked, and there was nothing but the dishes. So back she came, and says she, "No, they ain't come again." "Not one of them?" says the mother. "Not one of them," says she. "Well, come again or not come again," says the woman, "I'll have one for supper." "But you can't, if they ain't come again," says the girl. "But I can," says she. "Go you and bring the best of 'em." "Best or worse," said the girl, "I've ate them all, and you can't have one till they've come again." Well, the woman, she was done, and she took her spinning to the door to spin, and as she span she sang, "Me daughter has ate 5 pies today. Me daughter has ate 5 pies today." The king was coming down the street, and he heard her sing, but what she sang he couldn't hear, so he stopped and said, "What was that you were singing, my good woman?" The woman was ashamed to let him hear what her daughter had been doing, so she sang this instead of that. "Me daughter has spun five skeins today. Me daughter has spun five skeins today." "Stars o' mine," said the king, "I've never heard tell of anyone who could do that." Then he said, "Look you here, I want a wife, and I'll marry your daughter. But look you here," he said, 11 months out of the year she shall have all she likes to eat, and all the gowns she likes to get, and all the company she likes to keep. But the last month of the year she'll have to spin 5 skeins every day, and if she doesn't, I shall kill her." "All right," said the woman, for she thought what a grand marriage that was. And as for the 5 skeins, by the time came, there'd be plenty of ways of getting out of it, and likeliest he'd have forgotten all about it. Well, so they were married, and for 11 months the girl had all she liked to eat, and all the gowns she liked to get, and all the company she liked to keep. But when the time was getting over, she began to think about the skeins, and to wonder if he had 'em in mind. But not one word did he say about 'em, and she thought he'd wholly forgotten 'em. However, the last day of the month, he takes her to a room she'd never set eyes on before. There was nothing in it but a spinning wheel and a stool, and says he, "Now, my dear, here you'll be shut in tomorrow with some victuals and some flax, and if you haven't spun 5 skeins by the night, your head it'll go off." And away he went on his business. Well, she was frightened. She'd always been such a gatless girl, that she didn't so much as know how to spin, and what was she to do tomorrow with no one to come nigh her to help her? She sat down on a stool in the kitchen, and Lord, how did she cry! However, all of a sudden she heard a sort of knocking low down on the door. She upped and upped it, and what did she see but a small black thing with a long tail, that looked up at her right curious, and that said, "What are you a-crying for?" "What's that to you?" says she. "Never you mind," that said, "but tell me what you are crying for." "That won't do me no good if I do," said she. "You don't know that said, and twirled that tail round. "Well," she said, That won't do no harm, if that don't do no good. And she upped and told him about the pies and the skeins and everything. This is what I'll do, says the little black thing. I'll come to your window every morning and take the flax and bring it spun at night. What's your pay? Says she. That looked out of the corner of that's eye, and that said, I'll give you 3 guesses every night to guess my name, and if you haven't guessed it before the month's up, you shall be mine. Well, she thought she'd be sure to guess the name before the month was up. All right, said she, I agree. All right, that said, and Lor, how that twirled that's tail. Well, the next day her husband took her into the room, and there was a flax and that day's food. Now, there's the flax, he said, and if that ain't spun by the night, off goes your head. And he went out and locked the door. He'd hardly gone when there was a knocking against the window. She upped and upped it, and there, sure enough, was a little old thing sitting on the ledge. Where's the flax? He said. Here it is, said she, and she gave it to him. Well, come that evening, a knocking against the window. She upped and upped it, and there was a little thing with 5 skeins of flax on his arm. Here it be, says he, and he gave it to her. Now, what's my name? Says he. What, is that Bill? Said she. No, that ain't, says he, and he twirled his tail. Is it Ned? Said she. No, that ain't, said he, and he twirled his tail. Well, is it Mark? Said she. No, that ain't, said he, and he twirled his tail harder, and away he flew. Well, when her husband came in, and there was the 5 skeins ready for him. I see, I shan't have to kill you tonight, my dear, said he. You have your food and your flax in the morning, says he, and away he goes. Well, every day the flax and the food were brought, and every day there was a little black impet used to come morning and evening. All the day the girl sat trying to think of the name to say to it when it came at night, but she never hit on the right one. And as it got towards the end of the month, the impet began to look so maliceful, and that twisted that's tail faster and faster each time she gave a guess. At last it came to the last day but one. The impet came at night along with 5 skeins, and that said, What, ain't you got my name yet? Is it Nicodemus? Says she. No, 'tain't, that said. Is it Samuel? Said she. No, 'tain't, that said. Oh well, is it Methuselah? Said she. No, 'tain't that neither, that said. Then that looked at her with the eyes like a coal of fire, and that said, Woman, there's only tomorrow night, and then you'll be mine, and away it flew. Well, she felt that horrid. However, she heard the king coming along the passage, and in he came, and when he sees the 5 skeins, he says, Well, my dear, says he, I don't see but what you'll have your skeins ready tomorrow night as well, and as I reckon I shan't have to kill you, I'll have supper in here tonight. So they brought supper and another stool for him, and down the 2 sat. Well, he hadn't eaten but a mouthful or so, when he stopped and began to laugh. What is it? Says she. Ah, why, he says, I was out a-hunting today, and I got away to a place in the woods that I'd never seen before, and there was an old chalk pit, and I heard a kind of a sort of humming. So I got off my hobby, and I went right quiet to the pit. I looked down. Well, what should be there but the funniest little black thing you've ever set eyes on? And what was that doing but that had a little spinning wheel, and that was spinning wonderfully fast, and twirling that tail, and as that span, that sang, Nimmy, nimmy, not, my name's Tom, Tit Tot. Well, When the girl heard this, she felt as if she could have jumped out of her skin for joy, but she didn't say a word. Next day, their little thing looked so maliceful when it came for the flack, and when night came she heard that knocking against the window pane. She opened the window, and that come right in on the ledge. That was grinning from ear to ear, and oh, that tail was twirling round so fast. "What's my name?" that said, and that gave her the skeins. "Is it Solomon?" said she, pretending to be afear. "No, 'tain't," that said, and that came further into the room. "Well, is it Zebedee?" says she again. "No, 'tain't," said the impet, and then that laughed and twirled that's tail till you could hardly see it. "Take time, woman," that said. "Next guess and you're mine." And that stretched out that black hand at her. Well, she backed a step or two, and she looked at it, and then she laughed out, and says she, pointing her fingers at it, "Nimmy, nimmy not, your name's Tom Tit Tot." Well, when that heard that gave an awful shriek, and away that flew into the dark, and she never saw it any more. Farewell, good friends and fellows.